By now, you've probably heard about what has happened in Venezuela with the election and all of the chaos that is happening there right now. We've seen it on Canadian media, American media. It's pretty much global right now. The difference is what's not being talked about is the parallels between Venezuela and Canada. And I watched this video basically like Dora the Explorer going, hey, do you see the map? Tell me where the map is, because there was so many things in common between our two countries, and there is warning signs right here in front of us on how bad things could potentially be. And people always say, not here, not us. We're going to get into these similarities and you'll see how easily this can happen. And Canada is, of course, at risk. One of the biggest things that they always say when they interviewed people after events, they said, we never thought it would happen to us. Let's see what we can learn and let's get into it.
It seems Nicolás Maduro is a man who just can't lose. There are widespread and growing protests in Venezuela. People who swear up and down that Maduro was crushed in this weekend's election.
Y eso da mucha tristeza.
¿Por qué le da mucha tristeza?
Porque por lo menos ya los familiares de uno están pensando en irse.
3 separate Venezuelan polling firms had him far behind this month. He's the runner-up in each case here, sometimes only barely ahead of not sure.
Okay, so keep that in mind. Obviously in Canada right now, every single poll shows Pierre is probably going to win, and it's by a relatively large margin. He was just above not sure. That's quite the difference.
And on election night Sunday, the opposition said their man had won with more than 70% of the vote. But in an authoritarian country like Venezuela, that's not enough.
The Maduro-controlled National Election Authority declared him the winner with 51%.
51%.
51%.
51%, just barely a majority. Virtually every state apparatus in Venezuela is controlled by Maduro's party, and its head elections authority has made it very clear. Nicolás Maduro won, just like he won in 2018 and just like he won in 2013. But many world leaders, Chile, Mexico, Uruguay, Argentina, Peru, Costa Rica, they reacted the way the United States reacted.
We have serious...
So, again, just for a frame of reference, their Supreme Court, all of these other, senates and states are controlled by who? And these are appointed positions in a lot of these things. So these are hand-picked individuals, the Senate, like we have in Canada, who are picked by Maduro, who has said he clearly won. Oh, the Supreme Court said it, and the Senate, and all these people. Okay, sure.
Serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people.
The will or the votes. That's about as close as Blinken could possibly have gotten to saying this election was rigged. It was clear from the start this would not be a free or fair election.
I don't think anyone was ever under the impression that these were going to be free and fair elections.
The opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, was barred from running at all. That ruling came from the country's Supreme Court, which is stacked with Maduro loyalists. She still tried to campaign for her replacement. On her travels, she would find highways and gas stations mysteriously closed along her route.
These institutions are done at every level, right? So you have loyalists, and it's quite evident in Canada, whether it's unions, the education system, any sort of government are clearly left-leaning, or let's say Trudeau apologists in some sort of way. It's always strange to see similarities again, because people will say, well, Trudeau can't do all of it, and that's provincial, and that's this. Yes, but I understand these people are walking in lockstep with what he wants.
There's just this constant sort of trickle of harassment. I mean, everything from bus drivers to taxi drivers to restaurant workers to roadside stand, sellers that attended to her have been harassed and arrested.
And it wasn't just Machado. Her staff was targeted too. More than 70 opposition campaign workers arrested. just since the start of the campaign a few weeks ago, according to one human rights group. But Machado pressed on.
Can anybody else think of a time in Canadian history where, protesters or people actively fighting against, the incumbent government were attacked, whether it was financially, through their work? Was there a big event, maybe in Ottawa, with a bunch of people piled up who ended up getting harassed and attacked just for being there or just for donating? Can anybody think of it? Where's the map, guys? Swipe or no swiping?
And the setbacks continued. Closer to Election Day, Venezuela revoked an invitation to EU election observers to monitor the election. Maduro, angry about international sanctions, called those observers not worthy. And on the day itself, the opposition said its witnesses were denied access to the headquarters where votes were being counted. Only a small group of observers were allowed at all, some of whom are now calling on the government to release polling station level results, which it has so far refused to do.
For some reason, they're not publishing that data, and of course, that does not look good.
The end result? 51% of the vote for Nicolas Maduro, just 44% of the vote for his opponent, Edmundo Gonzalez, who would later tell his supporters, Venezuelans and the entire world know what happened. This was devastating for those who thought this time would be different. They felt...
Have you liked the video yet? It's a free way to support the channel. It helps to get this video shown to more people. And if you like what we talk about here, subscribe. I'd love to have you on board. Let's get back to the video.
Robbed. And it's important to underline how desperate for change many people are from life under Maduro. Despite sitting on top of one of the world's largest proven oil reserves, Venezuela has been an economic mess. It grappled with one of the worst hyperinflation crises in modern history.
Okay, is there another parallel there? A country that's sitting on top of large oil reserves, not being utilized by the government, not allowing that money to get back to the people, resulting in some level of inflation?
Prices going up 53 million %.
Obviously, we didn't have that level of inflation.
Over just a 3-year period. Just to buy chicken cost whatever this amount of money is. Unemployment.
It's 14 million, dog. Like, what do you... whatever 14M means.
Poverty, malnutrition, shortages of basic goods, they were all daily problems. More than a quarter of the country's population has fled, just in the last decade alone. That's nearly 8 million people, making it the largest displacement crisis in the world today.
Okay, cost of living crisis. People are leaving. A quarter of the population. So this has been happening in Venezuela for close to 30 years now, but it's only been the last 10, 15 that have been so bad that you've seen people absolutely escaping. Is there any other parallels with Canada? Perhaps the parallel that we also are seeing record numbers of Canadians leaving Canada. Now, keep in mind, I am not saying that we are struggling as much as they are. I'm just saying we are seeing micro levels of parallels.
It has changed since the last elections, and the opposition wants to win so that the Venezuelans that have left can come back.
Any hope of that changing hinged on Maduro being voted out.
It is a shame that quite likely, almost certainly, the Maduro government violated their trust in those institutions.
The evidence that this was not a free nor fair election is compelling enough that several foreign governments have held off on recognizing the results. Canada is among them. The White House said it wants Venezuelan officials to publish a full, detailed tabulation of votes. You heard the U.S. Secretary of State earlier.
It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently.
And there has been a parade of world...
Whenever the U.S. starts talking democracy with a country that has a lot of oil, I'm just saying my red flags do go up a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
They're speaking out against Maduro's supposed win.
Lo acontecido el día de ayer. Un avasallamiento sobre el sistema democrático libre, abierto.
Tienen que ser verificadas por veedores internacionales no dependientes ni partidarios del gobierno.
Llevado a cabo y perpetrado el dictador Nicolás Maduro no es ni más ni menos que una victoria pírrica.
But can any of Maduro's momentum be stopped? That's a hard question. He has the firm backing of the military. The legal system rules consistently in the government's favor. The legislature, it's very scaled back. Maduro's government actually established a parallel lawmaking body stacked with his own supporters, which legally overrides the country's National Assembly. The media, the economy, the country's oil reserves, all state-controlled.
Within Venezuela.
So that's again where people, it can't happen here. It doesn't take as much as you think. This guy's controlling an entire country through just a legislative body that he created, right? So you see how easily these things can happen, because Venezuela actually used to be similar to Canada. It was actually one of the third richest countries kind of in the Americas, and because of their oil reserves and things were going well. And then what happened is there was this wealth disparity, and the wealth gap started to grow, parallel with Canada. You had a lot of people start to be mad at the, upper class and the landlords and the business owners and all those things. And they said, okay, let's get this socialist government here. They're going to balance things out. But that's not how it works. Socialism doesn't work like that.
Well, I don't think that there's any recourse, other than showing this fraud, people in the street, and the pressure of the international community.
Foreign governments can impose sanctions, which they did in 2018 when all of this happened before. Then the Trump administration called it a sham election, and it immediately barred U.S. companies from buying Venezuelan debt. But a day later, Maduro's government expelled 2 top American diplomats, saying the empire doesn't dominate us here. It can do this because it has friends in high places. As Venezuela's ties to the West have weakened, it has forged new and stronger connections with Russia and China. Vladimir Putin has already congratulated Maduro on his victory and has promised to deepen ties. What would it take to unseat a leader who, by the end of this newest term, will have been in power for nearly 20 years in a country under single-party rule for more than 30?
30 years is all it took to go from the third richest country to being, there's people eating rats in the streets. Like, that's how bad it's gotten in Venezuela. And why is everybody concerned? Of course, because they have so much oil and it's easily accessible oil. That's always the argument against Canadian oil, that it's harder to produce and all that. But, Saudi oil is just easy to produce with their slave labor. But the point is, like, the Saudis are more aligned clearly with America. If Russia or these other countries can get basically an unlimited flow of oil from Venezuela, that would be bad, because all it would do is prop up the current government even more.
That there are a number of factors that we can look at right now that are different and distinct from what we've seen in the past. One of those being popular sectors, lower and working class sectors, really pouring out in support of the opposition, which we have not seen before. And that could result in a different type of pressure that we haven't seen in the past, both for material reasons and ideological reasons.
We don't know how this story, the uncertainty, will end. It's unfolding as we speak.
The election result has set this city alight. Police, the armed forces, tasked with defending the result.
But Maduro's critics do believe there's reason to be hopeful, because they say, look at what happened. Voters came out in droves. They lined up for hours. They spoke with their ballots, largely peacefully, and they say they won the election.
To anybody who feels like you can vote yourself free stuff, there is no such thing as free stuff. You're always going to be paying for it in some capacity. And these people thought, because of the wealth gap and the disparity, that they were voting themselves wealthy. You can't do that. As soon as you give the wealth to the government to distribute, it's kept within the government. It's wasted. There's corruption. There's all these things. So seeing this happen, guys, this is a live warning that we are watching, that something could happen potentially to Canada. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. You absolutely rock. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.